Chapter 6. The Dungeon. Just before down cycle. Kim is in the med lab sitting on the operating table, smoking while Macias checks his arm. Mercury is asleep in a bed next to Lizard. He tosses and moans. Everything seems to be healing up just fine. New muscle tissue is assimilating to the same strength and density as the original tissue. Everything is firmly attached to the new bone. No spike in blood cell or liver activity. So I'm good to head out again. Macias sighs. You're not planning on going out during down cycle. Down cycle's the only time I can get any sleep. Well, good, because that sure wasn't sleep you were getting in the gym last night, referring to the grunting and pounding he heard for hours. A little light exercise helps the healing process. Macias just rolls his eyes. There's a loud noise from somewhere outside that makes them stop and turn. Someone's yelling. Something hits the wall and clatters to the ground. One voice gets loud enough to make out. Hey, don't shove me. And then in the room, Ishmael, do something. Don't let her grab anything she can use as a weapon. Fuck you. Get away from me, Rose says, shoving him first before he can get too close. You too, bitch, backing Mary up when Kim comes into the room. The fuck's going on? Lights are about to shut off and you two are fighting? Getting between them, Rose immediately goes to kick him, but Kim steps back and catches her heel. Sweeps her back leg out so she falls on her ass. She's got a bunch of stuff under her bed and she jumped on me when I tried to see what it was. I told you, get away from my shit, scrambling back to her feet. Calm yourself, positioning himself over her like he's ready to keep fighting. Rose keeps a hard look as she gets up in a less threatening manner. You knew this was coming. Assholes, straightening herself out. Can't mind your own damn business, as she turns and stares at the wall. She let me frisk her, and she didn't have anything, Ishmael says. Yeah, because she's got it all under here. Kneeling down to check under the bed, Rose makes a move towards her, but Kim backs her up again. Mary pulls up the bed sheet to see. You fucking asshole. Tearing tape off the bed frame and pulling out a gun. Kim snatches the gun and turns to question Rose, but she's already with her back to them. Is this your gun? He asks Ishmael. Afraid to answer, but smart enough not to lie. Sorry. I put it in the drawer when I took a shower. I didn't think she saw. Kim shoves the gun at him. Next time, wear it in the damn shower with you. You afraid to get it wet? Actually, yes. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Anything else you don't know about a gun? Now's the time to speak up. Ishmael hesitates a second, but says, I've never actually fired a gun before. Kim snatches the gun back and sticks it under his belt. You're taking firearms training with Bravo tomorrow. For now, grab the broomstick you want some protection. Now what else is down here? See for yourself. Kim reaches under the bed and pulls out 2 knives, a box full of rations and a funny-looking oblong rod. You cleaning out the food supplies too? No, I didn't take that much. I just don't like going in there and talking to people, so I grabbed some extra. Do I look like I'm scarfing down all the rations? Stretching her arms out to show her skinny body. Tastes like shit anyway. I don't want it any more than you do. Kim flings the knives so they stick into the wall. Rose doesn't have anything to say about that. I'll take those, Mary says, prying the knives out of the wall, collecting the rations and trying to leave. And what the hell's this? Inspecting the foreign metal rod. He holds it towards Mary. This yours? From the workshop or something? No. Backing away like she doesn't want to touch it. I don't know what that is. It's your fucking dildo, quit lying. Well, you're the one who stole my vibrator, you disgusting bitch. You can make a new one. Kim frowns at the shaft in his hand, looks around for somewhere to toss it. Yeah, well, you know where to shove it. Enjoy. About to leave, but she's pissed off and there's no better time to get everything out than when you're already mad. Oh, and by the way, I heard about Zelda shooting humans. Kim gives her a hard look but doesn't say. How could you not tell us that? Or you expect us to believe she didn't do it in front of you? Kim still doesn't say. He just shakes his head and looks around the room. I guess I know why you kept it to yourself, but we can't let her back here after that. Mary, he says like an order. What? Refusing to back down. She's a murderer. Rose snickers and turns slightly over her shoulder, like Zelda's not the only one. She killed those people. Shot you. She only wounded me. That's even worse. She did it for fun, to make you hurt. It's sadistic. There's no telling what she might do to anyone else. We're not having this discussion. Don't try and shut me up just because you say so. You know I'm right, and we need to do something about it. I'm not giving up on Zelda, just like I wouldn't give up on any of you. Not you, not her, and my sister, Rose pitches in, and those helpless people she shot right in front of you, Mary wants to know. You pretend to be the righteous hero, but we've seen who you really are. Kim just crosses his arms. You're no kind of leader. You're selfish and irrational, always thinking with your cock. You treat war like a game just to prove how good you are at playing, but I won't let you play with our lives anymore. Tomorrow morning we're putting this to a vote. You don't get to decide everything for us. You're not a fucking god, Kimura Gracie. You're just a man. So tomorrow we'll decide. She stops yelling and realizes her heart is thumping. Her face is hot and flushed. She wipes sweat from her hairline. Feels like she still has more to get off her chest, but she's out of steam. Her anger's calmed down and she's getting self-conscious. So before anyone can argue, she just turns and walks out of the room. Kim doesn't have anything to say, but he's made up his mind about Zelda. Zelda is a warrior. These people have all lived other lives. She hasn't. She's a woman who looks death in the eye every day, every night, in her sleep. She's dangerous and volatile, but so are most good soldiers. These are unfortunate side effects of being an apex survivor and killing machine. The screaming emotional rush of war never goes away. It becomes you and fades into the background when it's time to do the job. These people don't understand that yet. They're still clinging to their old morality, still afraid in ways that make Zelda look like a monster. Kim turns to Rose, who stands up tall, empowered and even more defiant after the lashing Mary gave him. Get your things. Roll it all up in your bedding and let's go. I ain't going back in that cage, and I know what goes on up there during down cycle. You think I'm actually asleep during that? Go ahead and tell people if you want, but it's not going to change your sleeping arrangements. No one's going to have any sympathy for you after you strapped a bunch of weapons under your bunk. Rose breathes deep, starts to get a little nervous. Well, I'm not going, trying to hold firm. Kim just stares her down like she's going one way or another. What? You're going to manhandle me again? Kim pulls out the gun and turns it to stun. I can shoot you if you'd prefer that. It's pitch black in the dungeon, quiet but for the deep groans of the station, like a boat rocking in the sea. Everyone's asleep. It's down cycle. Some call it night cycle because it's the only time the place actually gets dark, and like Kim said, it's the best time to get some sleep. Otherwise, the lights are always on, and the noise of ships and machines and busy frogs buzzing about makes for an ever-present roar even down in the dungeon. But every 5 Earth days, the whole station powers down for about 4 hours. No one's sure why, but judging by the post-down cycle data stream, Mary thinks it's some kind of network reset. Things are noticeably cleaner and better organized. There's discernible patterns, which become less readable until the next reset. Mary describes it like any software has regular updates, only this is on a massive scale and doesn't contain the sorts of bugs and compatibility issues that arise due to the stacked nature of human software. Human software is all built upon itself in layers, and each new program has to coexist with existing programs. No matter how flawed or outdated the bottom is, it's almost impossible to change, because everything above is dependent on what's below. Frog software doesn't follow these same principles. Frog programs are more like colors. When an update is written into the software, it just shifts to a slightly different shade. In this way, they eliminate dependencies. New knowledge is gained. Old functions are refined. It's like a highly efficient biological system adapting naturally over generations of reproduction, except this happens through conscious effort within the span of about 4 hours. Outside, the station is cold and unmoving. The solar system's distant star reflects a pale milky light off a nearby planet. Eerie shadows stretch across the geometric landscape. When the place is powered on, it can look in some spectacular and classical way, like a fully technologized version of some ancient Earth civilization. But during down cycle, it becomes hollow and alien, like the crusted empty shell of an insect hive. The crew used to think it was a good time to search for survivors, scavenge gear, explore, or just kill frogs. But after going out in the dark a few times, they realize there's nothing to do. Everything is sealed tight, docks are empty, hangars locked down, frogs nowhere to be seen. Macias is asleep on his bunk in the med lab. He'd rather not sleep where he works, but he has patients to look after, and sometimes they need him in the middle of the night. He's no stranger to this kind of schedule. Even as a kid, his mother was a doctor, always on call, always getting up and leaving at odd hours. Eventually, she opened up her own practice. When he was a teenager, she gave him a job there, answering calls, greeting patients. He thought it was boring and smelled funny. He wanted to stay away from the medical profession. But after a year at university, he realized it was the only job that made any sense. He felt like a failure doing anything else. If he could be saving lives, or on a slow day directly contributing to people's health and well-being, it made any other job lose a bit of meaning. So he went to medical school to be a surgeon and eventually started working in the ER. It's the busiest place in a hospital. They need bodies. They need young people to work flexible hours and be on call. The work was hectic and impersonal. For everyone he helped, he usually wasn't there to see them off, and for everyone who left, there was always one who didn't, or another who would never be the same. He went from patient to patient, hardly learned their names, got blamed and yelled at even when he did his best, and always felt guilty he couldn't do more. Eventually, he decided to give it up, went back to school to be an architect. But of course, school is expensive, so he continued to work as a physician, only this time at his mother's practice. It wasn't a full-time position, but it was enough to help him get through school. And unlike the ER, it wasn't so demanding he couldn't do both. It was relaxed and personal. It wasn't 24 hours. No one was dying or bleeding or screaming at him. People came in for checkups, advice, prescriptions. He got to know people's names, families, and stories. It reminded him why he wanted to be a doctor in the first place. He finished school again, but never actually pursued a job in architecture. He'd come to enjoy work as a doctor after all. At first, he rejected the idea of working for his mother. He wanted to make his own way. But eventually, he realized there was no reason to reject what his mother had accomplished. His time working there as a boy, the pride he felt in seeing the way people loved and respected his mother, the strong sense of purpose and responsibility knowing the business belonged to them. These were some of the most formative experiences in his life, so he stayed, and when his mother retired, he took over the practice. Now he's here, sleeping in the operating room beneath an alien space station, performing experimental surgeries with foreign tools and medicines, bringing people back from the dead, patching up soldiers to go get wounded again, knowing they won't last, but healing them up for one more mission anyway. Responsible for the health and well-being of the last free and capable humans in the universe, holding humanity in his hands. Imagine there's less than 10 people left in existence and you have to save one of their lives on the operating table. That's a lot of pressure, and more than once he hasn't been able to pull it off. Every day he wakes up, he's not sure if he can take it. His soul can't take it, but every day he forces himself to get to work. He knows people are counting on him. He has to do his best. He has to do better than his best every day. And these fucking people barely know his name. But he can't be too mad. He knows better than anyone what's going to the doctor in a place like this, an appointment with your own mortality. So it's no wonder they want to keep it impersonal. Lizard sleeps on and off. He rests and dozes throughout the day, which makes it difficult to get any consistent sleep during down cycle. He's used to napping while things are busy around him. When it slows down, he feels wide awake. But with nothing to do but think and listen, he shuts his eyes and drifts off anyway. Thoughts and fantasies turn to sad, strange little dreams. His problem is that he's lost in a dream. He only ever had one love back in the soul system. It was a girl much younger than him. And sure, it was love, but to her it was one little island in a sea of love. To Lizard, it was the whole world. When she left him, he never got over it. Even when she wasn't on his mind, he could always feel it. A chip on his shoulder he couldn't brush off. He fell into a deep depression that he filled with drugs and the routine of work, blocked out the rest of the world and put all his focus into building cars, bikes, and spaceships. He worked for a small local shop and saw the same few coworkers every day, but never made friends with any of them. They joked and fucked with him, but no different than they joked and fucked with each other. Only difference was he took it personal. He started making guns in his spare time. Guns in the Sol system were illegal for anyone but law enforcement and military personnel. Of course, you could still get them like anything else. You could make a lot of money if you had a supply, but Lizard wasn't interested in crime or money. He was only interested in the raw power it gave him. Just to own those guns that he built with his own hands, and to know at any moment he could go blast those assholes who wouldn't stop talking shit. He could blow away his ex-girlfriend's new lover. He could blow himself away. He never did these things, but it made him feel better to know he could. Whenever people treated him like he was insignificant, he thought of the power he really had and decided they were insignificant. He survived inside those fantasies of power for a long time, until the frogs came. Even after the frogs captured him, he was still thinking about his first love, maybe more than ever. He thought he might finally have the chance to meet her again and live out his fairy tale redemption arc. He could save her from the frogs. She'd love him again. They'd be the only two humans left alive. They'd have nothing but their love for the rest of eternity. It was perfect in the sickest way, and of course it didn't happen. But he did survive. Kim brought him here. He met Mary and fell in love with her the same way he fell for all good-looking, charismatic women. But she didn't want him either. She wanted Kim. She built herself vibrators and went to bed alone when he could give her everything she wanted if she'd just give him the chance. He spent so long wishing and hoping for the hero to miraculously spring out of him, day after day wishing Mary would shine her light on him, but it never happened. All he ever did was work and work, and even though it was exciting and new and fulfilling, even though everyone appreciated it and admired his skills, he still felt like a useless cuck. Eventually, he slipped back into a depression, sleeping on and off, taking too much meds, living inside his little fantasies while he waits for love or destiny or something to come shine its light on him. Mercury calls out her moans in his sleep every once in a while. Simmons has his bedroll laid out on the ground next to him. There's not much he can do, but he can make sure Macias doesn't have to keep getting up to check on him unless it's something serious. Besides, if he wasn't here, he'd be sitting up in his room, in the quiet of down cycle, thinking every little bump and groan was his lover calling out in pain. Back on Earth, Simmons had a wife and son. He still mourns them somewhere in his heart, but he doesn't miss them. He doesn't wish they were here. He's not surprised how quickly it happened. He wasn't giving his all to his family in the first place. When his son was born, he started working nights so he could have the day to spend with his family. But that was a lie. He worked nights as a security guard and bartender at clubs and music venues so he could have an excuse to be out late having fun and meeting women. When he finally got home in the morning, he wasn't up all day raising his son. He was asleep and barely woke up to see the kid to bed, fuck his wife, and leave again. Even on his days off, he didn't plan an evening with his family or some stupid bonding activity with the boy. He'd tell them he was working overtime and go out partying instead. Try to hook up with the club girls, try to get a blowjob from one of the regulars, the girls he let in without ID or gave free drinks, the girls he was working on all the time, always trying to work himself into a position where he could move in and have that pussy. Women are that way too. They might not want to fuck you all the time, but they're always sizing up men and deciding which ones they'll get with if the timing is right. So he kept himself on that cusp with women and waited for the right time. There were plenty of women. He didn't mind waiting for one because another was always ready. He wanted them all. He was obsessed. He didn't even think how he was making a fool of himself and letting his family down. But there was a lot of time to think on those transport ships, a lot of emotions, helpless anger, regret, and shame. When your life is snatched from you and all you have left is to remember it from afar while you suffer, you get a much clearer picture of what it really looked like. He was sure some of his friends genuinely liked him in the beginning, but after a decade of working the same nightlife scene, running his hustle to get on your good side or get in your panties, doing the same thing to each new person who comes along, pretty soon you get a reputation. People start to groan and roll their eyes when they see you coming. Girls start warning other girls about you. Even through the thick musky fog of his ego, he had noticed women were starting to dislike him. But he told himself that's just what happens when he fucks a bitch. They start to resent him because they can't keep him. They can't have that good dick all the time. But really they disliked him because he was a shady, deceitful person, an obnoxious, selfish perv. Everyone knew he had a family. Everyone saw the way he was with women. They just didn't say anything because they didn't want to dirty their hands with his mess. Why bother when they weren't really his friends? And that's the worst thing. He had no real friends because he was so shallow. Everything about him was surface level. He was about looking good in the moment. He lived and thrived in that first impression kind of zone, where nothing you say needs to be true. It just needs to get a good reaction. And when you're always telling people exactly what they want to hear, you end up with no personality of your own. Always saying one thing and meaning nothing. Telling a story 10 different ways to 5 different people. Can't keep your lies straight. Can't keep your life and your soul straight. When he got to the dungeon, he threw everything he had into being a frog suit. He wanted to be like Kim. Kim was amazing. He was an artist on the battlefield, a virtuoso, flowing and composing right there in front of his eyes, emanating purpose and conviction. Simmons wanted to find some better version of himself in combat, some stoic eye of the storm mindset where nothing could touch him. But that's not how it is. It's never-ending stress. It's watching your friends die. It's fighting for your life and nothing else. There are no moral victories. The first time he killed a frog, he was overcome with a powerful righteous pride, until 10 more showed up and they were all the same. Sometimes he doesn't know what the hell they're trying to accomplish, but the only fucking thing to do is try. Otherwise, you spend your downtime worrying until you're so scared it feels like your first time again. The fear never goes away, but if you get up and face it every day, you can usually forget about it enough that your hands don't shake and your stomach doesn't cramp up. He hasn't always stayed strong. Sometimes he wishes he could go back to Earth and be that guy again. He could live his lies a few more years even and still salvage his family. But then he feels so ashamed it hurts worse than the fear. It pushes him to keep going. He doesn't want to die the man he used to be, a selfish coward. Sometimes he thinks up heroic ways of doing it, just to make sure he doesn't go out like a punk. Having Mercury helps a lot. A friend who understands, who's not a woman, who he loves and cares about maybe more than himself. In a way, he loves Mercury like a child or a kid brother, an innocent kind of love. He wants to look out for him. He wants to be a role model and show him a brave, strong person all the time, never let him down. It was different with women. He felt like he was always competing to stay one step ahead. With Mercury, he can relax and feel like equals. When they talk about personal things, they don't argue or use it as ammunition later. They help where the other is lacking. They praise and encourage each other's strengths. They feel like a team with the same goal. It's comforting, empowering even. He's not sure if it was a man he needed to realize this, but here he is, and he wouldn't rather be with anyone else. He turns over on his bedroll and looks up at Mercury's hand hanging off the side of the bed. He reaches up and strokes his skin with the backs of his fingers. Mercury jerks his hand away and coughs, groans at the pain of just being, at breaking from the still and careful rhythm of his sleep. Simmons whispers, "Sorry," in the dark, and closes his hand in a self-chastising way. But Mercury wheezes at the effort and grabs his hand anyway, tugs it up to the bed with an awkward injured strength. Simmons gets up to his knees and sits leaning against the edge of the bed for a while, holding Mercury's hand, watching him go back to sleep. Ishmael is snoring in his sleep on his bunk. He always feels so lucky to be alive. After hearing Rose's story, he knows that if him and his partner were next to each other when Kim came to open the cage, he would have chosen her instead. That's part of the reason he tries so hard, even when it's not welcome. He may not be a natural like some of the others, but he's determined to keep up. Mary says he's been cutting her fabrication times in half just by breaking down salvage and keeping the shop clean and organized. Lizard is talking more than ever. Rose is part of the crew. His efforts haven't been glamorous but productive. Sometimes he makes mistakes, but he can afford a few mistakes. Mary and Macias can't afford to fail. Kim and the frog suits can't afford to fail. It's written all over them. They carry it with them everywhere. He's glad he doesn't have that stress, but knows if he really wants to make a difference, he'll have to take on a bigger role eventually. He doesn't know what that might be, but he's been thinking about something else Rose said, and that was about sticking her in a frog suit and sending her to die. Because isn't that how it goes? If they need another soldier, they aren't going to draft the doctor or the computer programmer. They're going to take the guy who sweeps up and give him a gun instead of a broom. And here Ishmael is sleeping with a broom under his bed until he gets his gun back. Firearms training tomorrow. That's the first step. He wasn't expecting this to happen so soon, but he's trying to prepare himself mentally, because if they need someone to fight, he can't say no. He can't back down or make excuses, because if he's not willing to fight, then maybe it was luck that saved his life. In Mary's bed is an open digital display, and while she isn't visible herself, she's lying there behind it wearing her stealth camo. Her PC runs on her own bioelectricity, and while she does work in bed sometimes, that's not what she's doing now. She's just playing a little game she's been making. Designing games is what she used to do in her spare time back home. She loved video games, especially old ones. Most modern games were fully immersive virtual realities. She liked those too, but her real passion was old monitor and controller-based video games like they had before the proxy wars. Even at the time of the proxy wars, hardware-based games were considered ancient. It's a miracle any functional game survived at all. But there were other people like her, passionate and nostalgic enough about old technology to preserve them. When they dug through the wreckage years later, they found the usual things: food supplies, family records, photographs, letters to loved ones, and all the little trinkets that might seem worthless to a stranger, but which held memories and great importance to the owner, including old video games. The vast majority of games were lost or non-functional, but a few were recovered and preserved on the new, less intrusive internet design of the post-proxy era. Fans and collectors scoured any recovered media they could find: game manuals, magazines, VHS tapes, CDs, cassettes, and diskettes, looking for glimpses and hints of forever lost games. Mary was particularly interested in the myth of an old game character called Samus Aran. All official documentation on the game Metroid described the main character as a he, but other images and rumors hinted that after completing the game under certain strict conditions, Samus would remove the helmet of his spacesuit to reveal that he was a she. By today's standards, it's hard to imagine why a female character was such a big deal, even if it was a secret and dramatic reveal. But if the legends are true, then Samus would have been the very first female protagonist in video game history. The game itself was unfortunately never recovered, so there's no telling if the rumors are true. But either way, it's a fascinating story from a time when there was no public information network, no easily searchable catalog of on-demand data. Something like this would have been spread by word of mouth, would have become a kind of urban legend that people believed or disbelieved regardless of proof. Your friend might swear it's true but have nothing to show. You might read about it in a magazine, but then why does your game manual say the opposite? Who do you believe? You'd have to beat the game in under an hour without saves or passwords and see for yourself. Mary yawns and stretches. Her bedroll shifts under her invisible self. She's starting to get a little tired, but she wants to play her game a while longer before she goes to sleep. Kim is asleep in his bed, sprawled out like he collapsed after a fight and never got up. He's got a combat knife strapped to his chest, throwing knives on his ankle, and a gun under his pillow. Rose is back in the cage, blanket tugged up under her chin, asleep and drooling on her pillow. It's been a long time since she rested her head on a pillow. Last time they gave her one, she didn't sleep on it. She tore it to pieces just to make a mess. If anything, it's too soft and fluffy. She had to pound the thing flat so it wouldn't hurt her neck. At first, she was pissed about being in the cage again, but she got over it because she knows she's getting out tomorrow. Besides, It felt weird being in an open room with another person. Ishmael wasn't going to fuck with her, but she couldn't stop looking over her shoulder anyway. She felt whatever's the opposite of claustrophobia. If she was in the dungeon right now, she'd probably be up pacing around, looking for something to steal or just plotting and blaming everybody else. Sometimes after Sam went to sleep, she'd go out for a walk, tell herself it was just to clear her head, relax, get some fresh air. But really, she'd go out looking for trouble. She wanted some guy to put his hands on her so she could start a fight. She wanted to find a deserted street where she could throw a brick through a window. They were pretty much homeless, her and Sam. They didn't sleep in a park or an alley, but it was always a friend's couch, an abandoned car, a crummy rent-by-the-week motel. It was fucked up, but she doesn't have anyone to blame but herself. Her parents were nothing special, and they definitely weren't saints themselves. But she's the one who got herself kicked out when she was a teenager, for stealing from them, doing drugs in the house, bringing over shitty dudes who broke stuff and stole from them too. Sam was the good kid. She was a little shy, but there was nothing wrong with her. She was smart, funny, athletic. She should have made more friends, dated people, but instead she was always trying to tag along with her big sister. When she got older, she hooked up with some bitch who was into mood pills and painkillers. Sam started doing the same shit and overdosed. Her life was going nowhere even though she could have done anything. She ended up in a psychiatric ward on suicide watch, being fed even more medication. That's when her and Rose reconnected. She went to visit her every day and eventually decided the doctors didn't know shit. They weren't helping her get better, so she busted her out. It wasn't so dramatic. They just walked out without anyone noticing. And after that, it was just the two of them. Rose tried to stay clean and keep away from the scum and losers she'd been hanging out with, but it didn't always work. Sam started taking classes at the community college, but Rose knew she was ditching more than learning. Sam was a sensitive kid, and Rose tried to protect her, tried to make her happy. Sometimes she tried too hard. Maybe the kid needed to push through the growing pains herself. Maybe she needed to stop looking up to a nobody like Rose. But Sam was the one thing that made Rose feel like maybe she was somebody. Maybe she wasn't a fuck up. She used to go home early, stop drinking, turn down drugs, refuse to go along with the bullshit because she had to be with Sam. But what kind of excuse was that, when she'd just wait for her to fall asleep and go do something stupid anyway? What the hell kind of sister was she? She did her best to make the kids smile, keep her safe, find them a place to stay and something to eat. But she was a fraud. All she ever did was drag Sam along through her own filth and muck. She thought she was teaching her how to be tough and survive. Really, she was teaching her how to lose. But that's all over now. She wants to believe Sam could still be alive. But the asshole was right. Rose carried her through the shit for so long because she knew what would happen if she put her down. She wouldn't keep going. She'd wait right there to be picked up again. There's a rustling sound overhead like the wind across a rooftop. Again, somewhere closer. Then an unnatural sense of silence. The air that used to sing and breathe being choked. A presence soaks across the room. Not enough to know, but to anticipate. To know it's coming, but not when or where or what. Rose kicks in her sleep, knocks her heel against something that's not there. She shifts around to stretch out at another angle, feels something else in her way. She's still half asleep and doesn't question it, just rolls onto her back to find a comfortable position, when suddenly she's being lifted up by her face. Her eyes jerk open. She grabs and pries at the invisible thing gripping her jaw, but it's too strong. She tries to shout, but her voice is stifled by the creature's squeeze. She can barely manage a groan out one nostril. Her lips and cheeks struggle comically like being pressed against a pane of glass. Slowly, from top to bottom, her assailant reveals themselves. Jet black hair appears from nowhere, pans down to a woman's face, neck and shoulders. Still more hair, so long it would have taken years to grow. A filthy stained bandana keeps it back, billowing slightly in a breezeless room. She has an old scar around her right eye that makes her look like she's always sighting you down the barrel of a rifle. Her see-through camouflage pulses to describe her form. and whatever she's wearing isn't the standard frog suit. She has all the curves of a woman, does not hide behind the flat rigidity of a frog. Her camo pulses again, invisible, then wavering like water. It turns to match the color of Rose's skin, deeper like her lips, then fades to black like a shadow in the dark room, before revealing her true form. Zelda Nakamoto. She holds Rose in the air, gripping under her cheekbones, clamping around her jaw with inhuman strength. Rose has to plant her feet against the bars and hang onto Zelda's wrist to avoid ripping her face off. Zelda leans closer and inhales her scent. They let you bathe. Glances down at the bedroll, gives her pillow a kick. You have gained his trust somehow, like an AI analyzing facts. Rose squirms and kicks, tries to say something through her grip. Scream and I will rip out your vocal cords so fast that I will be holding the sound in my hand screaming back at you. Rose fights a shudder, feels her skin go cold as Zelda lowers her to the ground and removes her hand from her mouth. She sucks in a deep breath, nearly chokes on it trying to keep quiet. Speak, Zelda demands. Rose takes another second to catch her breath, glances over at Kim on the bed. Zelda uses 2 fingers on Rose's chin to direct her attention back to her. He won't wake up. He's on too much meds. And it's been... She turns to look him over for a brief second. 6 days since he slept. Rose tries to find an inoffensive posture to maintain, tries not to let her hands tremble or ball them into fists. Tell me what I want to know, she says without blinking. They let me out for a little while, trying to comply. A little while, like that's not good enough. She looks her up and down. They let you out long enough to bathe, gave you a bed, new clothes, trusted you with something sharp enough to cut your nails, trim your armpit hair. You are back in the cage and it is locked, but your bucket full of fecal ammunition is not around, which means that should you need to relieve yourself, they plan to let you out again. She rattles off. Rose swallows hard, not sure how to explain because she doesn't think this crazy bitch even wants answers. She knows everything already. What she really wants is for Rose to make a mistake so she can punish her. Zelda grabs her by the throat, not hard enough to choke her, just hard enough to control her. If you make me guess what you did to deserve such pleasantries, I'm going to kill you in anticipation of the wrong answer. Rose thought she'd seen a lot with the frogs. The frogs are brutal. They don't give a shit about you. That cold disregard is terrifying, makes your skin crawl. But Zelda makes her skin squirm. It's not like some higher species who sees you as insignificant. Zelda knows what she's doing. She's like one of those psychopaths you see interviewed in prison. They exude a kind of aptitude and intelligence that's frightening because of that something missing in their eyes. Maybe you did not hear me, when she doesn't answer right away. I said I am going to shove a knife into your tattooed cunt and drag it up through your stomach all the way to your throat. It was the new guy, trying desperately not to make eye contact. They came up here and talked to me. Who is they? Kim. Kim and the new guy. They came up here and talked to me, and I decided to talk. That's all that happened. It's the first time I actually said something. They still don't trust me, but they let me out for a little while. They want me to be useful. Zelda holds her there a second longer just to keep the tension, before releasing her and pacing outside the cage, passing right through the bars. And who is this new person? Rose just stutters, blinking and staring, mind fuzzy after what she just saw. Zelda whips her head around and shoots a look that snaps her out of it. I don't know. They got him a few days ago. He has some extraordinary talent, she wonders out loud. Not that I know. I think he's a teacher. He talks about animals and feelings and shit. Teacher? She thinks about it a second longer before dismissing it. And what of you? Walking right through the cage bars again, crossing her arms and leaning her shoulder against the now solid bars once she's inside. Nothing. Of me? You wish to be a member of the crew. You make allies now. I just didn't want to sleep on the ground anymore, next to a bucket of my own shit. Zelda doesn't take her eyes off her. You don't lie, but you do not reveal your true intentions either. Rose frowns and lowers her head. I don't have any intentions. Speak up. I don't have intentions. I mean, you people saved my life. Dropping her eyes again. Look at me. I just don't want to be in the cage anymore. Trying to keep her eyes steady. I don't know if I want to be here at all, but I guess it's better than being dead. Zelda shakes her head like at a child giving her the wrong answer. You still wish for revenge, do you not? Rose hesitates because she's afraid to get caught in a lie. She doesn't even know what she wants anymore, to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. Zelda nods, as if that hesitation was answer enough. Rose starts breathing heavy again, racking her brain for a way out. She knew Zelda would show up during down cycle, but she figured those two would have at it and ignore her like they usually did. She thought being in the cage would keep her safe. Zelda never cared about her before. If anything, she was showing off, and Rose would just lie there like a dog and pretend not to notice. This time is different. She's like a frog reading her mind. She's walking straight through solid matter. She's cold and sharp even with her stupid lover man over there in the bed. And Rose is trapped, cornered in the cage and in her mind, with nowhere to turn where Zelda isn't ready for her. Rose looks up and Zelda's right there in front of her again, grinning devilishly. Rose shudders and backs up against the bars. You want to gain a bit more trust, do you? Rose makes some indeterminate motion with her head, clears her throat. Zelda comes closer and takes Rose's hands gently. She tries to pull away, but Zelda's gentle grasp clamps down hard. Zelda giggles to herself. Kim is a very simple man, you have seen? Rose mutters something or nothing. You're not the only woman who's tried to kill him. She laughs again, without joy or sarcasm, only a strange wickedness, and the pleasure she derives from power and intimidation. And yet you would never think of putting me in a cage. She strokes Rose's hands, letting them slip slowly from her fingers, and when she does, the nails are black. Rose jerks her hands back and turns them around to see, but the nails aren't bloody or broken. They're just colored black somehow. In fact, he defends me, when the rest of you might prefer me in a cage, or even dead. Am I right? Rose doesn't have time to respond because Zelda grabs her face again, turns her head sideways and starts drawing on the bald side of her skull with one finger. Rose feels her touch, soft but strangely alien and invasive. Are you getting the picture? Turning her face like an object, not a person. She extends her finger towards her mouth. Rose clenches her teeth and tries to move away, but Zelda tightens her grip again. Or do I have to spell it out for you? She strokes her bottom lip, leaving 3 black marks, then touches her throat up to her chin, leaving another 3 lines extending up from her collarbone. What are you doing to me? Rose says, checking her nails again, resisting the urge to touch her face. Hold still. Cold and plain as she draws bits of her eyebrow back, leaving it staggered but symmetrical. She takes a step back to judge her work, adds a beauty mark by her eye, makes a thin line on her nose like a ring, and marks her earlobes black to make it stand out where she used to have plugs. She pauses again to look, sighs and frowns like it's not so bad. You have a certain whorish charm, I suppose, lifting her shirt to see what else. Rose tugs her shirt down, still doesn't understand, but she doesn't want to be raped by Zelda in this cage. Now, the next time you get the urge to kill him, swimming closer, just kiss him instead. She moans against her cheek. Put your hands on his big, strong chest like this, touching her like she's him, like he's all you want and you need him so. Burying her face in her neck, black hair tickling at Rose's cheeks as she tries to inch away. And then you jam a knife into his belly as she does just that, sticks a blade into Rose's stomach. Rose's eyes go wide as she starts to let out a groan, but Zelda covers her mouth so she can't make any noise. And the next down cycle, stern and serious, without a hint of the cooing sensuousness from before. If I come back and Kimura Gracie does not have a new scar on his belly, you will have a new scar on your belly. Rose rolls her eyes back in pain, groaning and clutching at herself as Zelda removes the blade and slices her palms too. Blood flows through her fingers. Zelda lowers her to the bedroll with her hand covering her mouth, goes invisible, then vanishes as Rose starts screaming in pain. Rose is in the med lab lying on the operating table, screaming at what Macias is doing to her stomach. Macias has his PC display open to shine some light on the situation. It's still down cycle, and this is the best he can do. Simmons is kneeling next to Mercury's bed, holding his hand. Mercury feels queasy every time Rose lets out a piercing, gut-wrenching shriek. Lizard is on his side, still trying to get some sleep with a pillow over his head. Kim is pacing around smoking, ready for war. How could she have gotten in without me hearing? She had to come through the vent right above my head. She's not that good. Rose lets out a scream. You gotta stop moving, Rose. I'm only making things worse here. Yeah, you are. I'm gonna have to put you under. No, she insists, gripping onto the table. The wound goes deep, into your stomach, possibly the intestines, and who knows what else until I get in there. No, I'm not going under. Not with that psycho still around. Is she still here? How the hell should I know? Simmons, go check on Mary and Ishmael. Yes, sir. A bit tired but alert. Have Mag watch the halls, and get Ishmael a gun. Explain to him how to use it. If he still looks confused, take him to the range and have him fire off a few shots. You sure we should be making that much noise? Simmons asks, as Rose screams with the intensity of an animal being torn open and eaten alive. The frogs aren't listening, and if Zelda's still here, she'll know we're serious. Aye, aye, sir, as he hustles out of the med lab and Kim turns back to the operating table. Did you see how she left, Rose? She would have been using camouflage, but she's not a ghost. The door never opened, right? What about the vent cover? Rose growls and clenches. Nothing opened. She walked right through shit like it didn't exist. She walked right through the cage. Through the cage? No, she just manipulated the lock, same way I do. I'm telling you, she walked right through the fucking bars. She didn't even try. It just wasn't fucking there when she wanted. Kim doesn't believe it. There must be some explanation. Whatever she saw must have been an illusion like the camouflage. And what's all this? Rubbing at the design on the side of her head to see if it'll wipe off. Don't touch me, she shouts, jerking her head away and moving to smack his hand, but the pain makes her drop her arm and convulse uncontrollably. Stop thrashing around, Rose. And Kim, maybe you should go check your room. Make sure everything's sealed. Do something about that vent if you think she got in through there. What's on my face? Rose wants to know. She did something to me. She made my nails black, and then she did something to my face. Kim frowns at the designs. It looks like a combination of makeup and war paint, and on the side of her head is an image in startlingly intricate shades of color. It looks like a rose. A what? A rose, opening his own PC display to reflect the image back to her. What the fuck? Looking at herself in the mirror. She hasn't seen herself in a long time. She's startled by the strange tension of the skin around her cheekbones, the hollows under her eyes, the stupid pattern staining her face like some cheap elven whore, and a big red flower unfolding on the side of her head where her hair won't ever grow back. Damn it, get it off! Smearing blood all over herself, trying, coughing and heaving, eventually starting to cry. Rose, please, calm down and take some meds. No! Slapping the tray of meds off his table. I told you I'm not going under. Kim, do something, man. She won't stop moving. Hold her steady. Rose kicks and growls even worse. Don't you touch me, she says with so much effort she gets lightheaded, turns and vomits blood at his feet. I don't think I'm gonna help calm her down. No, let me through. Mary bursts into the med lab with Simmons and Mag behind her. She tears her arm out of Mag's grip. Let go of me. Kim, she shouts, marching right up to him. Rose moves her eyes to Mary for a second, then up to the ceiling. She grits her teeth and at least stops crying and causing a scene with everyone here. Mary makes a face at all the blood and mess that Rose is. What happened? Looking around at everyone for an answer. It was Zelda, wasn't it? She'll be fine. Mary scoffs at him. She's bleeding profusely from a wound in her stomach. She turns sideways to keep Mag and Simmons in view. Make sure they don't try to grab her and take her away. Ishmael trails into the room cautiously, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. Oh good, we're all here. With more than just her usual sarcasm. So you remember that conversation we had earlier, Kim? Kim keeps his eyes locked on her but doesn't say. I think now's as good a time as any to decide about Zelda. Mary, shaking his head slowly. I don't even have to ask what she did. Even though it's entirely illogical, it's still obvious. She snuck in and attacked Rose, who she's never met, and should have no reason to want to harm, unless she was in your bed. Like hell, Rose shouts through the pain, making sure there's no doubt. So Rose was defenseless in the cage, probably asleep, and Zelda attacked her in the same room without even waking you up. Now you send 2 armed soldiers to my room to watch me, which means you agree that Zelda is a serious threat and we need to do something about it. Kim breathes deep but still won't say. Mary tosses her hands up and shakes her head angrily. Don't look at me like that. Where's the fearless, decisive leader, Kimura Gracie, when we need him? Or is your dick gone soft after sticking it in Zelda too much? It's not that easy. Seems pretty fucking simple to me. Zelda's a danger to all of us. Not just me or you, and at the very least she should not be allowed back in the dungeon. Not to talk, not to fuck, nothing. And since she has weapons and a frog suit, kills humans, and indiscriminately harms other members of the crew, we ought to shoot her on sight if she does show up. Does anyone disagree? I'm going to phrase it like that because I know you're all about to get real quiet. Crossing her arms and looking around at the rest of the crew. Everyone does get real quiet, even Kim. Rose is the first to speak up. Agreed. Macias sighs and keeps working. Mag is next. Agreed. Simmons steps forward. Now wait. I know what she did was fucked up, and I get it. We can't trust her right now. But she did cover us getting Mercury out. Oh, fuck off, Mag says. So she shot a few frogs. The 3 of us would be dead if it wasn't for her. And how's 3 of us make up for the dozens of humans she splattered? Simmons takes a deep breath, looks at Kim, looks around the room. He grumbles and shakes his head. Man, I don't fucking know, rubbing his face. The frogs is enough to worry about. I don't want to have to deal with Zelda, too. Especially not where I sleep. That's 4 out of 9. Simmons picks up his voice. That's not what I said. I don't know what to do. But whatever we decide, just know that I'm not raising a gun on Zelda. That's a good way to get my ass shot. The room gets quiet again. Macias is the next to speak up. He thinks about his words carefully. The fact that she just stabbed the woman on his operating table. I treated Zelda a few times, right here, as he continues working on Rose. I may not have known her well, but just by the nature of our doctor-patient relationship, I got to know her a little better than most of you have. And before someone tries to interrupt me, I just want to point out that the danger she puts herself in is not like the rest of us, especially those who stay here and work in the dungeon, raising his eyes to them for a second. I've been a doctor for a long time, and I ain't seen the worst, but I still seen it all. That's just the way this job goes. And same as I look at life and death a little different than most people, well, that woman's seen a hell of a lot more than me. Now that doesn't excuse what she's done, but here we are acting as judge and jury, and I don't think any of us has tried walking in her shoes or thought about where the hell she comes from, 'cause it sure ain't the world we remember. No one interrupts him. The only sound is Rose trying not to sob and whimper too loud. Macias, the oldest of the crew, and while he usually plays the back and tries to avoid a leadership role, everyone has a certain unconscious respect for him. In one way or another, he's saved most of their lives, and the ones he hasn't all assume with confidence that he will if something happens. Just the way he carries himself, focused and composed, confident and calm, always gets right to work, always has a solution or remedy. And even when he doesn't have something positive or reassuring to say, he doesn't say the opposite. He doesn't let his own emotions and stress seep out and affect the others. When everyone's busy with their own problems, he tends to fade into the background, but his presence alone offers a kind of stability and wisdom that even Kim doesn't. Now I agree she's gotten out of control, but I know she cares about people. She wouldn't be out there risking her life and her body on her second tour of duty if she didn't. I don't know what it'll take for her to come around, but if we are going to let her back, if, he stresses, before someone objects and starts arguing again, if we are going to let her back, then Kim needs to talk some sense into her. far away from the dungeon. And if she comes back, she should agree to disarm when she's here, just as a show of good faith. But the last thing we should do is treat her like an outcast, because when the shit cuts loose, we all look to her for help, and she's never backed down or complained. Simmons speaks up. I agree with Macias. I want her to come back. She's not my enemy. Until she fucking stabs you, Rose says, spitting up blood. Hey, you tried to kill Kim. He let my sister die. Trying to sit up and argue with him. Please, Rose, Macias says, trying to operate. Rose grumbles at the pain as she lays back down. Kim still doesn't say anything, but the way he's looking at Mary says that's 3. Mary tries not to show her displeasure. Okay, Lizard. Everyone turns to Lizard. He suddenly feels an immense pressure and importance he wishes he could hold on to, but his answer is easy. He lifts his head to look at Mary, coughs, says, I don't want to see anyone else get hurt. Mary nods approvingly. Mercury? Simmons speaks up again. Hey, Mercury's on a lot of meds. Oh, does that mean we should wait for Kim to sober up too? Motioning to Kim, who's filling the room with smoke. He just had multiple fucking surgeries. Merc, you don't gotta answer. But Mercury is reaching and mumbling something. His lack of energy and teeth make it hard for him to say. Simmons leans over. Mercury grabs his shoulder to sit up slightly and speak in his ear. Simmons listens, then turns to the group. He says he doesn't know what's the right thing, but we wouldn't be alive without her. Mary takes a deep breath. That makes 4 against 4, with one more person yet to decide. All right, Ishmael. Everyone turns, and Ishmael feels his heart jump at the room full of eyes all focused on him, stress and anticipation tugging at their expressions. He feels himself shrinking smaller and smaller. He knows there's no right answer. Ishmael doesn't get a vote. He never met her. Who cares if he didn't meet her? He understands the situation. Ishmael, you don't get a vote, so don't even open your mouth. You'll only cause more problems. Don't threaten him. I'm not. That's just the way it is. He's a member of the crew. He gets a vote just like everyone else. No, he doesn't. Keep your mouth shut, Ishmael. No, this is stupid. Because once again, Kimura Gracie has the final fucking say. That's not how voting works. We had a vote and it's even. No, because Ishmael didn't vote. We decided, he starts, but Mary cuts him off. We didn't decide anything. You decided. We decided she needs to disarm and agree to stop fighting with us. And we're just supposed to take her at her word? You want to let her walk back in here like nothing, but we can't trust her. After all she's done, we can't trust her. She stabbed Rose, she shot you, she's using the gear we made against us, and you of all people shouldn't have the final say. You shouldn't have a vote at all. If Ishmael doesn't get a vote because he doesn't know her, then you shouldn't get a vote because you have a relationship with her. You can't make a rational decision if you're fucking her. At least Ishmael's thinking clearly. He's the only one here who can observe the situation objectively and remain impartial. Fine, filling the room with his voice. We'll let him vote. But if he gets a vote without even knowing her, then so do I. That's not the same thing. It's your logic, and it goes both ways. Mary puffs her chest and scowls at him, but doesn't dispute. Ishmael, what do you say? Once again, everyone's attention turns to him in the dim second-hand light. Tired, desperate eyes, strained faces, the boiling pressure of having ignored the problem so long, while simultaneously running it over in their minds again and again. Now there's 2 sides arguing, a crew member being operated on, the eyes in the silence and the dark, the palpable tensions of humanity struggling to survive. He glances between Kim and Mary, swallows hard, and when he's made his decision, he turns to Mary. I think, pausing to think it over one last time, I think everyone deserves a chance. Mary rubs her face and groans into her palms. She wants to scream at everyone for being such imbeciles. She wants to smack some sense into Ishmael and keep arguing her point. But it was her idea to vote about it in the first place. She can't argue the results of her own process. All right, fine. But this still means we do not trust her until she disarms and turns over the frog suit. If she shows up here on any other grounds, She's considered a threat and should be dealt with as such. Suddenly, the station hums to life. Lights blink back on. Electronics and machinery drone and whine as the station starts to sing that familiar Always tune. Everyone tenses up at the sudden shift, but quickly settle into reality, glancing around at the well-lit faces. Anxious, tired, long faces. Kim heads for the door, and the rest of the crew move out of the way, except Mary. Where are you going? We're not done here. We're done here, and I'm heading out to keep up my end. Simmons, keep an armed patrol in the hall till I get back. She's probably long gone, but we should be safe. I'm surprised the frogs haven't paid us a visit anyway, so from now on we stay ready. All right, sir. The rest of you clear out. There's a surgery going on in here. Go back to bed. Looking at Mary when he says it, for no reason but to say fuck you too, as he heads out to gear up and leave.